Okay, hello everybody. I brought a quite different but hopefully an interesting topic for you. I'm a biologist and I'm interested in ecological studies and ecological studies, and I try to identify species by their sounds, and I want to share my very first results, some preliminary results in this topic. And of course it is related to the deep learning techniques, and that's why I'm here. Okay, it's okay. Okay, so nowadays, in the last couple of years, ecology really discovered the deep learning techniques for itself. That is indicated by the number of papers related to the usage of these kind of techniques. Mainly, they are related to the image processing and image classification. And these images coming from photographs, from video recordings, from satellite images. And based on that classification, we can identify individuals, species, we can assess or calculate somehow the diversity itself. This would be the first level, I would say, that is what is related to deep learning techniques. But there is a higher level where, based on this lot of data, actually we can build ecological models related to, based on deep learning techniques, and we can somehow predict the ecological changes. For example, what is the human impact on the ecosystems? And and what I'm really interested in is the passive acoustic methods. What is actually just we put out microphones or hydrophones into nature, and we connect it to autonomous recorders, and we just collect a lot of sounds. So that would be the very essence of that, and that's how after that, from the recordings, mostly based on the spectrographic representation, we can identify the different species on the recordings. And so these kind of techniques also emerging in the last couple of years. And as you see in this graph, we can have a lot of information from the recordings for given species or individuals. We can have somehow their activities and behavior. We can figure out what's happening in urban environment. We can, so a lot of, and we can use this data for conservation. And also, as you can see, that what kind of studies are these? Mostly they are related to the following the activity of the insects, the frogs, birds, and prominently the bats, actually. And in this talk, I'm really interested in the bats. And of course, I'm pretty sure you know that the bats, most of the bats are echolocating. It means that they are giving out ultrasound, and they are sensing the echo from the environment. So that's how they can orient themselves or find their prey. And it means that you know that bats mainly active at night. So actually the acoustic methods are very useful for that. That's why we have so many studies related to the bat sounds, the passive acoustic methods. And so bats, we find bats in many different environments, even in towns, but actually bats it's a really difficult and challenging time for bats, and of course all the other species, that human really changing the environment. And so bats has to somehow cope with the changing environment on really large scale, the climatic changes, the deforestation, and of course the mosquito killing and a lot of other problems. So, and all of the bats in Hungary, for example, protected, and they are endangered because of these things. But beyond that, actually, we can see that bats react to the changes of the environment quite quickly. So if somehow the density or the compound of the insect communities changes, that there will be some changes in the behavior of the bats or the occurrence of the bats. So that's why we say that bats are good indicator species. They can reflect the changes in the ecosystem. So it is really good to study bats because we know a lot of different aspects how the environment changes. Let me show some sounds. Oh, I don't know that I shared this in a good way. Okay, can you hear this sound?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, so what you can hear is that it is a greater horseshoe bat, and it's producing very high frequency sound, around 80 kilohertz, and I showed you a 10 times slower down recording just to make it audible for us. So this is a so-called constant frequency sound because you see that it's there is a quite long constant frequency sound, but we have other species, for example, the nutter's bat, that producing this very short frequency modulation signals that has very large bandwidth. Or there is another coil type that, for example, a common pipistrelle bat is producing. Also starts with a frequency modulated part, but there is a little constant frequency part in it. And lastly, let me show you a bat with alternating coil types. You can hear a lower and a higher pitch sound. Okay, so actually it seems bats are really different from their, so we can differentiate their echolocation coils, but most of the bats not so easy. So for example, the Meiotis species, for example, Daubenton's bat and Geoffroy's bat, it is much more difficult to differentiate them. And it means that we have to really measure these sounds. For example, where is at what frequency they have the energy, the maximum energy, or how long these coil times, what is the starting frequency, end frequency. So we can measure a lot of parameters, and that's how we can figure out what species they are. And for that, already a lot of people collected data, and we have big tables that we can follow, and a lot of times we can measure. I mean, we can identify the bat species, and we can make, of course, graphs to make it more clear. And you can see that with different symbols, you can see different bat species. And it is depicted by the end frequency of the core and the signal duration in milliseconds. And you see that there is quite large overlap between the species, so it's not as easy. So we have to maybe check other dimensions also. Maybe it is better for this Meiotis naturae species. But what is the conclusion from this? That it is not easy to identify the bats. And the reason of that these sounds were not selected in the evolution for to be well differentiated by species, but they were evolved for the task, and the task was task is to orient themselves in different habitats and to catch their prey. Okay, so we need automatic bat species identification because it is just really challenging to do it manually. And already there are out a lot of different solutions, commercial and free softwares, and they are not so bad, but they are around, they can, for example, for European species, they are around with the accuracy between 60 and 80%. That can be already helping, but it's actually, we always have to manually verify the results. So it is not very satisfying how this program is working. What is really good method what they developed recently is the not identify the bad species, but without the species information, we can detect the bad coils, and it works really well. I use this method, and it works well with very intense background noise also. And nowadays there is already a solution. I mean that they started to work on the species identification based on deep learning methods also, and it's a developing field. And what my intention is to somehow join to this field and making better better classifiers. So, and the actual project that I'm interested and I joined is that there was a very intense sampling in Vas County in Western Hungary, where we collected almost 5,000 hours of recording from more than 1,000 sampling points. And it is a very it would be really important for the national park to know that which forests are viable, which one they have to save from the forest management, for example. So it is a very nice task, but of course I cannot do that without automatic identification. So very first step that I did that I collected. I mean that with the help of my colleagues, we collected enough data. I mean that a lot of data from 12 species. Actually, in Hungary we have 27 species, but we concentrated on these species because we didn't have data from other species. And actually, what we used is we collected more than 65,000 bad coils that was coming from recordings where we already know that what individuals are on the recording, or we identify them after the recording. And there's another aspect of this project, and this one is that not only bats are on the recordings, but so hopefully you will hear it. So it's not a bat, but actually they are tawny owl chicks. So we can maybe detect other animals also that could be important for the national park and for the conservation. And so what we did is there is an open library for the bird sounds. It is called Xenocanto, and we downloaded a lot of recordings. And we made a database with more than 100,000 samples from 12 species. They are all nocturnal species. And we used quite the same technique for both birds and for bats. We built two different models, and the common approach is the image classification. So we generated spectrograms from the sound files. We can take them as images, and we can feed a convolutional neural network this information. And we use the framework, this darknet YOLO framework that I used successfully previously, and actually it is a simple image classification problem now with deep learning techniques. So I show some pictures from bat coils and bird songs of bird coils, and you see that they are not very. I used pictures and sounds with different background noises, with different kind of noises to make our classifier robust and usable later. Okay, and for both bats and bird model, we used quite a similar classifier. with 10 convolutional layer, and I used the Wigner GPU cluster to teach these networks, and I got already pretty good accuracy, but they are just preliminary results. So I didn't make ROC curves, and I didn't go very detailed into the. I didn't go very much into the details yet. So that's how we have now. But I'm really interested in that, how we can even improve these results. And recently published a paper. They compare different network architecture, and they show that actually it makes sense to try out different networks. So this is one direction that I can go. The other one is that I didn't do any pre-processing of the recordings, and also we can use data augmentation to have more samples, and it means that we have to mix it with different background noises to make it more robust. And of course, I'm really interested in to include more species into this framework. Okay, and hopefully we can use it in this national park project. We can use it to figure out the habitat preference of the different species, to identify those forests that is really valuable, where there are many protected animals live. Also to figure out the ecological corridors, how the animal farms contributing to the conservation of the species, because we discovered and other authors also that that a lot of protected species are really interested in the insects that is related to these animal farms. And also what is I'm really interested is that there are huge solar panel fields we put out, but nobody studied yet that what is the effect on bats. So that would be my talk, and thanks for my colleagues for the data collection and data preparation. Thanks for the Wigner Lab that we could use the GPU cluster, and yeah, thanks for your attention.
Okay, Sándor, thank you very much. It was a very interesting talk. It was a bit long, but I'm asking whether do we have any questions from outside? Actually, here we have one. You can take that mic.
The dark and the yellow is for the fast detection, and perhaps when some bird or bat arrive the microphone places, you can write it, identify and make photo and other things. So you can real time.
I think it's a very nice idea. And it means that, of course, that we need these processing facilities on the spot, and it is a little bit different framework. But I think it's a very interesting that you are suggesting. So our framework now is that, of course, we collect all the data, process it, and we will give back the information to the national park. But as you mentioned, YOLO is really developed for very fast working, and it would be really cool to have such a device in the future. Yeah, it's a very good point.
Okay, thank you. Sándor, I would have also some questions. One is a simple one. So what is the sensitivity in distance in these devices for the bats, for example?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, because different bats has different sound level. So the sound pressure level for small bat can be just make it that we can only sense them from 5 meters. But other bats we can sense 50 meters, for example. So we really have to take it into account in such studies when we are interested in the abundance.
So basically you have about 50-meter diameter around your spots on the map, and that's what you can call it.
Yes.
And another question related to your slide, where you had the frequency versus timing and a huge statistics in relation with special bat species. So have you compared this to birds, because you have also several studies on birds? So what's the difference?
Oh, sorry, I missed the point. I missed
one of your slides. I couldn't remember the slide number. You had 2 plots. In the left side, you had something like the typical frequency versus the time in milliseconds.
I see. For the bats, yeah.
This was for bats, for one species, and the other was for another one.
I see now. Yeah.
The question is, if you compare this to birds song.
No, not yet. It would be nice to have the same plot for the birds. That's what you are suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't do that actually. So I don't have that. I didn't compare them, but yeah, that would be nice to.
I'm using a very similar method to analyze the things in the deep learning way, but I mean, maybe you can just have to go on the old analog way to have a look at it, how, right? Whether the structures are similar or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a little bit lost, but that it is really embarrassing now. But I didn't get it very well. But maybe we can discuss it maybe later.
Yeah, we can discuss it.